All right, so this is going to be another movie review. This one's called House by the River, 1950. Giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. I dislike this movie. The buildup was so slow and boring. It was like a soap opera, and I couldn't relate to any of the characters in this one. Enticing blonde beauty, lures lovers, straying eyes. House by the River, starring Lewis Hayward, Lee Bowman, and Jane Wyatt, who later went on to Amityville Dollhouse, directed by Fritz Lang, a Republic picture. House by the River is a 1950 U.S. film noir directed by Fritz Lang and starring Lewis Hayward, Lee Bowman, and Jane Wyatt. It is based on the 1920 novel of the same title by A.P. Herbert. Rich Victorian-era novelist Stephen Byrne, who lives and works by a river, accidentally kills his attractive maid after she begins screaming when he makes a drunken pass. The writer manipulates his brother, John. Didn't I watch a recent Lorenzo Lamas movie that was kind of similar to this? John is physically impaired with a limp. To help him dispose of the body, he manipulates his brother, the writer does, making use of a sack, which Stephen had borrowed from John for carrying firewood. They stuff the maid inside and they dump her in the river. Days later, the sack and the body float up and it passes Stephen's house. He goes into the water and he desperately tries to retrieve it, but he fails. The police recover the bundle, and because John's initials have been stenciled on the sack, it is all traceable to him. And of course, Lewis Hayward has no interest in putting the blame on himself to save his brother. Production companies: Republic Pictures, Fidelity Pictures Corporation, distributed by Republic Pictures. Release date March 25th, 1950. A running time of 88 minutes. Country US. Language English. At a late night meeting on a dock, an inquest is held. And to Stephen's great pleasure, a cloud of suspicion hangs over John, who's tortured by his role in the situation, and he contemplates suicide. He and Stephen's wife, Marjorie, harbor feelings for each other. Seems like Marjorie and John are more affectionate to each other than Marjorie and Stephen. Stephen, meanwhile, has used the maid's disappearance and death as publicity for his books. Looking to reap great financial gain, he begins writing a novel specifically about the crime. In it, he implicates himself, although he doesn't think this will be evident to the general public. Really? He doesn't think this will be evident to the general public. It seems like everybody in this movie is super retarded. At a late night meeting on a dock, Stephen knocks John unconscious and he pushes him into the water. Arriving back home, Stephen comes on Marjorie in his upstairs office reading the manuscript, and she confronts him with her knowledge that he's the killer, having read between the lines. Why wouldn't anybody read between the lines? much less his wife. Stephen begins strangling her so she won't tell the police. But Stephen stops when he hears John's footsteps come towards the room. The swamp creature ghost is here. A haggard-looking John enters the room, and Stephen runs away in panic. How did he escape with his bum leg? As he runs, he sees before him, in a curtain blowing in the wind near the top of the stairs, the image of Emily. He tries to run past the curtain, but it catches him wrapping around his throat, and he cries out to Emily, "Let me go." He falls over the banister to the floor below, presumably to his death. That was a spectacular ending. Why couldn't the rest of the movie be like that? I would have given this a 1 out of 5 if it wasn't for that great ending, which lasts about 10 minutes, by the way. And this movie is, an hour, 30 minutes? Director Fritz Lang wanted to make the character of the murdered maid a black woman, but the Hayes office was against it, as sexual desire between blacks and whites was seen as problematic. Only in 1950. It probably would have been a black woman if they did a remake now. When the film was first released, film critic for the New York Times, Bosley Crowther, panned the film, writing, "We fear that neither the enlightenment nor the excitement that a customer might expect in such a flickering melodrama is provided by this film. The script by Mel Donnelly, based on a novel by A.P. Herbert, is shy on genuine melodrama. It provides little in the way of suspense, since you know that the killer is bound to get his. And it comes to a weak and cheerless end. It seems the killer is a novelist, and the killer unconsciously writes an exposure in his new book. This is about as measly a way to catch a man as we know." That's why I found it kind of amusing, actually. I wasn't expecting the real killer to be so clumsy. More recently, film critic Tom Vick praised the film, writing, "Lang beautifully evokes the Victorian era with his customary attention to detail. Cinematographer Edward J. Cronjager's low-key lighting fills the Burns mansion with appropriately gloomy shadows, and the moonlit river scenes make it seem as if nature itself is offended by the crime. Avant-garde composer George Antheil's haunting score is the perfect accompaniment to this chilling and unconventional exercise in suspense." I wasn't suspended per se, but it wasn't a terrible movie by any means. Just a way to kill time, I guess. So I'm going to be homeless in a couple of weeks. I'm on a waiting list to get a homeless shelter bed. So technically, I'll have a roof over my head. I won't be sleeping in my car in the church parking lot. So I got to start doing reviews at the library. I got to find a San Francisco library that has a private room where I can do reviews. I'm thinking the one block away from my church, if I can find parking over there. House by the River, 1950. 1 hour, 23 minutes. It gets a whopping 7 out of 10 on IMDb, 4,600 ratings. Also known as House by the River, an absent-minded murder. Yeah, everybody's absent-minded in this film. A deranged writer murders a maid after she resists his advances. The writer engages his brother's help in hiding the body, causing unexpected problems for both of them. Here's a more flattering review from Hitchcock the Legend on IMDb. Hitchcock the Legend gives it an 8 out of 10. I'm giving it a 4 out of 10. And the title of the review is on IMDb is it's people who should be blamed for the filth, not the river. Okay. So we'll click on this and then we'll scroll down, see how far we can get. More like this, human desire, secret beyond the door. You only live once and beyond a reasonable doubt. Fritz Lang originally wanted a black woman to play the role of Emily Gaunt, but the producers refused. Those racist producers. Shame on them. The women are dressed in turn-of-the-century type clothing, but the men are wearing modern hats and suits. John Byrne. Oh, here we go. Here's the review that I was telling you about from Hitchcock the Legend, dated March 6th, 2011. Title of the review is It's People Who Should Be Blamed for the Filth, Not the River. House by the River is directed by Fritz Lang and adopted by Mel Donnelly from H.P. Herbert's novel, The House on the River. It stars Lewis Hayward, Jane Wyatt, Lee Bowman, and Dorothy Patrick. Music is by George Antheil, and photography by Edward J. Kronjager. Novelist Stephen Byrne Hayward makes a play for the housemaid, and he unwittingly kills her when she repels his advances. Everything is so awkward in this movie. And the absent-minded killer. Enlisting the help of his disabled brother, John Bowman, to dispose of the body in the river, Stephen suddenly finds that the publicity surrounding the maid's disappearance has put him in vogue again. In fact, he finds his muse sufficiently stoked enough to craft another novel. But as easy as Stephen finds it easy to have no conscience, the opposite is the case with John, and with the river refusing to hold its secrets, something is going to give. Working out of Republic Pictures, Lang refused to let the low-budget production hamper his vision of a bleak Cain and Abel-like gothic noir melodrama. I didn't even think of it that way. Cain and Abel. He did, however, meet some resistance when requesting that the maid be played by a black woman, which was quickly shot down by nervous executives at the famed B-movie studio. So I guess we don't have your token black lady in this 1950 film. It's all a bunch of white folk. House by the River is far from being among the best of Lang's work, but the final product is still a triumph, considering it's basically a 3-character piece set virtually in just 2 locations. It scores high on eerie atmosphere and finds Lang's dealing in moral bankruptcy responsibility and the eye for eye mentality ushered into the narrative too is a lang fave of people irked by loving someone they can't have. These themes allow the director to gloss over the simple script and dally in some truly arresting visuals. Well, I wouldn't call them arresting, but black and white, creepy looking house is cool, I guess. Aided considerably by Cron Jagger's Desert Fury Canyon passage, chiaroscuro photography, Lang's film is a lesson in how to maximize effect from limited sets. The actual house on the river and that of the neighbor, resplendent with creepy scarecrow and garden, has a very disquiet feel to it, fronted by shimmering water that carries the dead carcass of animals. It's a most haunting setting, and the eerie atmosphere continues inside the house where shadows work their wonders, and Anthiel's music sticks rigidly and rightly to the creaky house formula. The cast don't pull up any trees, but they don't need to. Hayward is perhaps too animated for a study in snide villainy, but it works, and he has a nice line in visual mocking. The rest fall in line for what is required, with the best of the bunch being Anne Shoemaker as nosy neighbor Mrs. Ambrose. Yeah, stupid Mrs. Ambrose thought that both of the brothers were innocent. But both of them were guilty because the supposed Abel character, I guess, ended up helping his brother dump the body in the river. I guess he was a co-conspirator who tried to hide the murder from the police. That should be a crime, right? Obstruction of justice, maybe? Once a hard-to-find film, House by the River, is now easily accessible after gaining a DVD release. The print is fine, some age spotting and crackles, but completely watchable. I saw it for free on YouTube. Multiple versions of it are on YouTube, and so it must be public domain now. It's a film that is easily recommended to Lang and Gothic house-based movie purists. Yeah, it's got that Gothic vibe going a little bit, not too much, driven by a despicable protagonist and cloaked in a creepy noirish vibe, a noirish vibe, I should say, and cloaked in a creepy noirish vibe. It deserves to now gain a better and more appreciative audiences. 7.5 out of 10. Okay, here we go. John Byrne is quoted as saying, "You must be very, very ill, Stephen." Stephen Byrne says, "Ill?" This was featured. The women are dressed in turn-of-the-century type clothing, but the men are wearing modern hats and suits. This was featured in La Documentaire Culturelle, Le Funeste Destin du Dr. Frankenstein, 2018. Turkey in the Straw soundtrack, uncredited. American folk song, author unknown. Release date March 25th, 1950 in the United States. Country of origin, United States. Language, English, also known as Flood Tide. Filming locations, Republic Studios, Hollywood, Los Angeles, California, USA. Production company, Fidelity Pictures Corporation. And technical specifications, runtime, 1 hour, 23 minutes. Inglorious black and white, of course, and an aspect ratio of 1.33 to 1. So there you have it. House by the River. I got off early thinking I could find some better housing options, but the pastor at my other church in Belmont led me astray. He didn't know what he was doing, and I thought I had faith in him to help me, but no such luck. He's not Superman like I thought he was. Oh well, at least he knows the teaching of Christ, and for that I give him an A+. All right, going down the list, we've got The War of the Vendee, 2012. Code of Silence is number 2, 1985. And A Stranger in Town, 1943. I'll try to get through The War of the Vendee tonight, but I've got to go to Safeway to get some honey barbecue Fritos for my chili. Laters.